Alrighty, so we are back out in the shed. It was time to dig out the camera and do a bit of videoing. I've been falling a bit behind in the videoing department and feeling a bit lazy, but the car's been progressing. Some days is definitely harder than others. The old 2-step forwards, 3 steps back is exactly what comes to mind with the thought of painting a car at home. The thought is probably a good idea, but the execution is another. And in this video, I'm going to take you guys through some of the problems I've encountered along the way. And then obviously in the last video, you would have seen how I applied all the orange, and then the car was to be wet sanded back and then ready to have the clear applied, and then we can move on. But it didn't go as planned. So in this video, I'm going to take you through that, where we're at with the car now, and get into it. Cheers. Alrighty, back out again in the shed. This week we've been doing a lot of wet sanding, so getting absolutely filthy. Shed's nice and orange again on the floor, shoes nice and wet, but getting through all the stages now. We've started off with 800, working the way through to 1000, 1200, and finishing it off with 1500. Most of the car is blocked off, or blocked back now. All that's left to do is the roof. So haven't been filming a lot as wanting to get that wet sanding stage of it done, and it is a little bit boring. Don't want to leave the camera set up and showing you all how to wet sand, because there's plenty of videos out there that I'm sure will show you how to do it properly. But I'm going to do the roof. I've still got a bit to do behind the back of the car. So as you can see, the car is starting to look a bit chalky. Most of it is all rubbed back, as I said, but just got the roof to go. So car's been getting filthy from what's been happening or harvesting across the road, and we've still got this rear beaver panel section between the tail lights to sand as well. All the edges are really good, so I won't bother going to town on them. They'll get scuffed back though before applying the clear. So going through all the motions, I did rub through this door not long after starting out, so I rubbed through just along here, which that repair was before. So obviously, once again, mistakes being made along the way, but pushed the car out, masked up that area, and then blew that area in just with a bit of paint. It's got roughly 3 to 4 coats on the car, obviously not enough in that area. Was probably sanding in that one spot for a little bit too long without some guide coat. So that's all good now, ready to go. Started stripping back the engine bay, so I'm going to try and paint the engine bay without removing the engine as much as I really want to. I think it will still come out great, but I'm going to remove most of the parts on the engine, dizzy, leads, maybe the rocker covers, and remove the radiator. That's all out, drop the fluid, and just slowly work through tidying up that. So put another brake booster on it, which is similar to a V8 LX one, paint stripped that, heater box removed, and slowly working through getting towards that. This week I've also been doing the bonnet, as that is another thing that hasn't been done. So this week, or on the weekend, I got stuck into doing this bonnet, which is now all acid washed, metal conditioned, as you can see. Leaves a little bit of a slight surface rusty look, but that'll clean up straight away with some scuffing with a Scotch-Brite. So went around and conditioned all the areas that I could see that needed a bit of rust treating, and inside and out all the seams along the edges, just where it will maybe break through with rust one day. We don't want that to happen. So finished off welding all the holes that were previously in the bonnet. You can not see any holes anymore. And then I'll also show how flimsy the bonnet was before along all of the edges with this hole in the bonnet. Went along and welded up and spot welds in these areas, and then filled in all the bonnet ribbing sections so that it is no longer hollow, just something that's a little bit neater and is heaps stronger, that no longer wobbles, and it is nice and neat. So we'll get some primer onto that this week, and then we can move towards getting some color on that, as I believe that really should be orange underneath and then black on the top side. And then we can move in towards doing the blackouts around the door frames, but we can't do all the blackouts until the rest of the car is being put in clear. So hopefully this week we can work towards doing that. These are the GDS wheels I was talking about. They are 8 and 8.5s with the offset, so shouldn't be too bad. they're all going to get sandblasted, and then we'll go through the motions of getting them maybe powder coated black and then mask them up, and they'll do the silver, but we'll see how that goes. Also this week painted the boot, so did this after doing the car, but did it in the booth, or the temporary booth, without the fan on the side there. I think that fan's a little bit too powerful, so I did it without the fan on, and that is off the gun, and it probably come out better than most of the car did, so a lot less crap in the paint, but that'll get blocked back as well. And also finish off doing the rear spoiler. Had some orange on that earlier, but it had a crack in it, so it's had quite a few fiberglass repairs and bracing underneath to try and straighten it out, as it wasn't very good, but now it's looking good. So that's all orange now, and then as we work towards doing all the black, this will be going silver in here for the SLR 5000 lettering, so that'll look pretty good. Anyway, moving into it, I'm going to start sanding back this roof, making a mess with water, and blocking it back ready for some clear. So before I get into sanding the roof, I just wanted to cover, a couple of people have asked me if I could show them the way that I'm going to go about wet rubbing it down. Now, I'm no perfect spray painter, panel beater, whatever. I'm just a guy at home in the shed giving it a go. So this is how I would go about it. But if you want to go about it a different way, or you've got your own methods, then by all means do that. But first of all, I went across the whole roof and wiped it down with a wet cloth, because the car was covered in crap from the things that are going on across the road with the farming. Get rid of all the grass and dust and crap that's in that. You don't want to get any of that caught up in the sandpaper, especially when you're wet rubbing. So I've gone across, wiped the roof down, and then filled up a bucket with water. I'm going to rub the roof down with 1000 grit instead of doing 800 grit like I did on the doors and that. The roof isn't that bad. So 1000 grit, go across the roof. I've lightly covered the roof in some black texture marks as a guide, nothing crazy. And once the black texture marks are removed, obviously I have gone enough to not go too far. So another thing, I'm just using a medium to soft block, nothing too hard. I don't want to block the roof with a rock hard block, as it is obviously a curved texture, or a curved shape, sorry. So medium to soft block works well. And also an old car wash sponge, let that soak, and then once you're up top, you don't have to bend over repeatedly to fill up or wet the sandpaper to get it back into the bucket and go back and forwards bending over. So also recommend getting a stool or a crate if you can, stand up high so you're not reaching over too far to get everywhere into the roof. And like I said, also quickly just plasticed off or sheeted off the front of the car, so that all the water that drips off of the roof mainly doesn't go all over the dash and make a mess. So hopefully it drips down here and goes on to the floor. Anyway, I'll get into blocking this down. Just continuing on with the bonnet and metal prepping it. Well, prepping it for paint, but obviously, as you've seen in the other clips, rush treated it all with metal conditioner, and then now I've just gone over the whole bonnet, cleaned it by hand, wire wheeled it everywhere I can, and removed any bit of paint, grime, sealer from all the seams, so it's all spotless the whole way around the bonnet, inside and out, and looking really good, ready for some primer before laying some colour on this. So I think I've spent more time now on the underneath of the bonnet than the rest of it, so now's time to flip it over and I can get stuck into doing the top side. We'll just give that a quick sand, probably with the orbital, clean up all the messiness on the other side, like lolly water, and I think it's actually pretty good underneath. Just got some little bits of paint here and there and maybe some spots of rust, but we'll get that cleaned up and continue on with getting this ready too. Alright, bonnet pretty much finished before the sun's completely gone down. I am nearly working in the dark, so I've banged up a torch above me and I've got a fluoro just temporary behind me so I could see what I was doing. Bugs have eaten me alive, but I've just run through quickly with how the bonnet is now and where it's at. So using that orbital sander, obviously, it's not something that I really like to use on a panel like a bonnet, but got to keep that in mind. I wasn't pushing hard. The idea of the orbital sander was to remove the excess little bits of paint here and there from when it was paint stripped, lightly go over any areas that still had any paint or little bits of light surface rust, and removed all that. So I've gone over the whole bonnet and done that. This is actually quite a really good bonnet. No real distortion. Obviously those old holes you can just see previously have been welded up in order to move the scoop back into the correct position, and this bonnet is pretty well ready to be primed and painted. So although it's not going gloss or orange, it's going satin black, so it still needs to be really good, as satin black does show any sort of distortion or imperfections in the panel. So yeah, that's pretty well ready to go now. That can get done tomorrow, and then that is another piece ready to go and be painted. Alrighty, so some truths that I wanted to talk about first. So when we painted the Torana in the temporary spray booth I've got sorted here at home in the shed, we had the car facing the other way around and painted obviously the back half of the car and the front half not. The fan or the evaporation filtration system, whatever you want to call it, was probably not ideal, and the fan that I've got in the wall I think was a little bit too strong. So after having the car painted and then obviously wet sanding it all back, you get to see all those little imperfections that are in the paint, the things that are falling in the paint, where are they coming from? So I'll spin the camera around and hopefully you can get a bit of an idea as to what I'm getting at. So this fan in the wall here is the main fan I'm using to evaporate all the paint out of here when I'm painting, and then I obviously had this tarped off here so that it was down and wet the entire floor with the hose. So the idea with the hose being that as I'm painting, it's grabbing any overspray and it's also flowing out the door with the flow or the levelness of the concrete. So that worked well. In some areas where it started to dry out with water, you can see where the concrete has really stayed orange in places. So it can be a bit of a pain in the ass as well, because if you leave it too wet or it gets too deep, you can start to track water around the car and it splashes up and it can cause issues as well. But you also need the water there to try and catch any heavy overspray, so it's a bit of a catch-22. Secondly, this here is an old air conditioning vent, or it still is an air conditioning vent. So when I first did the car, this wasn't sealed off, and with that big fan on over there, I believe that it was creating a bit of a vacuum in here with turbulence and resulted in a lot of crap in the paint. So come time to do the clear, sealed this off as it needed to be near perfect conditions in here. And then I went on to paint the car, or the panels and the car, without this fan on, and literally went to Bunnings and got like a $25 pedestal fan, petitioned it off in here in three bays, and done the doors, guards, all of that right up the front with no fan on the wall, and just using the little pedestal fan, and it worked fantastic, especially with the clear and the panels laying down. I just feel like it flowed out heaps better. Then when it come time to do the car, which I chose to spin the car around and do it the other way, especially for the lighting. It is much better on that back wall than it is against this door, and hard to get in there as well with the gun. But the main problem I had along the way with doing what I've been doing is, come time to apply the clear, when I had them sitting in here hanging, didn't notice until they were on trestles and removed the doors off the car, but the bottoms of the doors had little to next to no paint. Like, I could see through the orange, and I knew straight away that there wasn't enough product left on the panel, especially after chopping it out, doing the wet sanding. So the decision was made to once again apply a couple more coats of orange that I still have left, just seal the car once and for all, apply a few even coats over the quarters, did the roof again, did the doors, guards, everything got painted orange again. The only problem with that is I didn't wet sand the in-between coat. So it literally got painted orange, let it tack off and flash off for at least a minimum of an hour, and then clear coated the whole car. It's come out pretty good, I can't complain. There is a couple of bits of crap, dirt, fluff or whatever in the paint, but you're gonna get that in a home or shed paint job. It is just the nature of the beast. It's a bit of a pain in the bum. However, the whole car's got to be rubbed back anyway. So once the car is ready, which it nearly is now, I'll get into showing you what we've been doing with the pillars and the blackouts. But the whole car nearly now is ready to be wet sanded back. Then I can get into cutting it back with the rotary buff and then buffing it with the DA, so the dual action buff. But I'll get into that at a later stage as well. That is another process that I do enjoy doing. It's just a time-consuming job as well. So, as I said, been a little bit lazy on the camera and it's been a bit of a pain in the bum. A lot of people have been asking me what's happening with the car. Just haven't had time to get around to doing a video. So anyway, Here are some shots of the car where we're at with the blackouts. So all around the door frames, with obviously the doors off, is now done in eggshell 2K satin black, which is the exact same as obviously the guards are going to have on the top and the bonnet as well. So that's all looking really good. It come out very good. It's hard to see, but the whole roof really is covered in a little bit of overspray as well, so you'll probably hear that. But like I said, it's all got to be chopped back. This satin black comes out really good, so started wet sanding this quarter already, and this side is still yet to be done, but got to go through obviously all the paces. But I'll try and get some of that satin black in the light. It's come out really good. Nothing really too drastic in the paint. The masking went pretty well, and then just that front pucker around here which gets blacked, and then that cowl panel, tops of the guards, and then the tops of the doors will be going black as well. But while the doors are off, it's also a good opportunity to do the polishing, but the doors and that have to go back onto the car to get them straight and gapped so I can do the blackouts, because I don't want to do the blackouts with the doors off of the car and then put the doors back on and the black not line up. So it's a bit of a process. It's a pain in the bum, got to be honest, but you got to go through these steps. These doors have already been wet sanded back all the way to, this one is done in 2,500, and this one is up to 2,500 as well. Here's some panels over here that are still yet to be polished, but driver's side door come out really good considering. I mean, it ain't no perfect paint job. I don't know if there is such thing as a perfect paint job, but for the environment that I'm doing it in and the experience that I have, which is still minimal, don't ask me to paint your car because I will probably say no, definitely. I'm trying to perfect this stuff myself, so having my own troubles along the way before thinking that I can tackle and take on anyone else's work. But these have come out pretty good. So they've still, obviously, like I said, still got to be chopped back, wet sanded, and then they can all be buffed. But before that, still have to probably do the blackouts. I'll probably rub them back on the top and into the guard a little bit, and then they can get onto doing that, because I don't want to wet sand and buff right up to the satin black, so it'll still be pretty shiny. It's hard to tell with the shed lighting, but you can see there's a little bits of pieces here and there that's off of the gun. It's not too peely. There's bits and pieces here and there in the paint, but fingers crossed all of them should chop out, and the boot actually come out really good as well. That's flow coated, well, clear coated, and it looked really good. So starting to get there. Obviously a lot of individual panels. We've also got the bonnet. Now the scoop has had all the old holes bogged up, fiberglass filler and normal filler, and going through the process of putting these holes back in the normal position, as it had some in uneven spots. That's all good. And obviously the bonnet has been all welded up so that before, I think the scoop was about 3 inches forward in a funny position. So I'm going to move the scoop back to put it in the near factory position. So that'll be all good and well. I've still got to mark that out perfectly to where I want it to sit, and then drill the holes obviously. Top of the bonnet is painted in a black primer, obviously because the car is going to be painted satin black on top, and if it chips, I don't want cream or white primer underneath. And then this side of the bonnet is all painted in a white 2K primer, because this side of the bonnet needs to go orange. So we're getting there, slowly, but it's a bit of a process. Also, I wanted to mention with the blackouts, out of the factory, it might not be like this. It might not be exactly how they were, but this is just the way that I wanted to do it. And also, a lot of these cars weren't black in the door, behind the door frames, in the pillars. They were just black on the door frames where the door opened and shuts. But being such a bright color, it's orange. I didn't want to see through those gaps and see orange behind the black. So it's just to seal off that door frame area and in a pillar so that it's all tied in black and that the orange doesn't stand out. So once the doors are shut, it'll look pretty good and you won't see any bright colors. If it was a dark color, like a black or blue, grey, it might not stand out as much, but that's all grey in there now. It's looking really good. The whole clear coating process from the car came out not too bad. There's a few bits and pieces in it, but for what I'm doing at home, the process is all starting to come together, and I was hoping that by the end of the year it would be close to, I guess, being assembled, but there's still a bit to go, and there's still about a month until the end of the year, so still got a bit to go, so I'll keep chipping away at it, and hopefully along the way there's not too many more problems, but that's all part of it, and I'm willing to tackle them head on as they come. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. That's all for now. Hopefully by the next video we are a little bit closer to getting this thing on the road, but there's still a lot of work to do. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you liked it. We'll see you all on the next one. Cheers.